I used to work as a Firewatch guy in the summer a few years ago, as it has come to be known. I was on my second week as a Firewatch lookout in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, out near Mount St. Helens, Washington, when all of this happened. For those who don't know, that's a few hours east of Portland, tucked into the Cascades. The job is supposed to be simple. You're supposed to sit in a tiny cabin on a mountain ridge, scan the trees for smoke, report fires, and kill time. Absolutely no internet, barely any cell service, just a radio and a notepad. It's isolated as hell, but kind of peaceful if you like that sort of thing. Sometimes you will have people nearby you in other towers, but not all of the time, depending on the size of the forest and such. I'm up in the Marble Mountain Lookout, elevation about 5,000 feet. You get a decent view of the forest stretching out in every direction. The nearest town is Randall, maybe 12 miles away as the crow flies, but it takes at least 45 minutes to drive there on winding back roads. The cabin is basic. It's just a small wooden shack with a propane stove, a bunk bed, and a metal desk that has seen better days. I brought some canned food, instant coffee, and a bunch of bucks, but mostly I just watched the trees. First few days were boring as hell and was just the usual. Scanning for smoke, logging weather, listening to the radio chatter from rangers and pilots. The forest is really dense here. They have shit like Douglas fir, western hemlock, and some old growth cedars. There are a lot of deer and black bears, but they mostly keep to themselves. It is the kind of place where you expect nothing to happen, and that's fine. But then, on day 7, something weird caught my eye. It was late afternoon, around 4:30 p.m. The sky was clear, sun starting to dip behind Mount Adams to the south. I was pacing around the cabin, binoculars in hand, just zoning out. That's when I noticed a faint plume of smoke coming from the far east edge of the forest, near the Green River Gorge area. I've been here before, and I know what normal smoke looks like, usually a campfire or a controlled burn, but this looked different, thinner, almost like mist, but with a faint yellow tint. I grabbed the radio and tried to contact the dispatch center in Vancouver, Washington, but got nothing but static. The emergency channel was dead, too. That struck me as odd. Usually, at least one ranger or pilot picks up immediately. I tried again, louder this time. Dispatch, this is Marble Lookout. I am seeing smoke east side near Green River Gorge, requesting status update. No answer. I felt a knot in my stomach. That kind of radio silence usually means something is wrong with the network. It would usually mean something like a storm or equipment failure, but the weather was perfect. I wrote down the coordinates as best as I could on my notepad and decided to keep watching. Over the next hour, the smoke plume thickened, still with that weird yellowish haze. It wasn't spreading like a normal wildfire would. It stayed almost static, like it was clinging to the ground. Then, just as I was about to call it in again, I saw something move in the smoke. At first, I thought it was a helicopter or a drone, but it didn't have any lights or a recognizable shape. It was more like a shadow shifting inside the haze. That is when I realized it did not make sense. This part of the forest is under a strict no-fly zone, except for emergency aircraft, and I had not heard any choppers on the radio. I grabbed my camera, a basic digital one I brought just to document the lookout, and zoomed in. The image was grainy, but I swear, I caught glimpses of shapes. Tall, thin figures moving slowly through the smoke. They were not human, not really. Their limbs were way too long, too angular. They didn't walk, they glided or floated above the ground. I blinked and rubbed my eyes. Maybe I was seeing things. I texted my girlfriend earlier that day about how isolated it was here, how I was probably losing it, but now, I was genuinely scared. I tried calling the local ranger station in Randall. After a few rings, a tired voice answered, "Randall Station. Hey, it's Jake from Marble Lookout. Have you heard anything about smoke near Green River Gorge? I'm seeing something weird here, like a yellowish haze with shapes moving inside." There was a pause and then, no fires reported, no controlled burn scheduled. You sure you're not looking at fog or something? No, it's definitely smoke. And those shapes, it's not normal. The ranger sighed. Jake, you're high up. It could be mirages. Weather can mess with your eyes. Just keep an eye on it, and report back if it spreads. I did not feel reassured. I kept watching until sundown, but the smoke did not dissipate. Around 7 p.m., the temperature dropped fast, and the cabin started to get cold. I lit the stove and tried to shake the creeping unease. That night I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those figures gliding through the smoke, like they were waiting for something. When dawn came, I grabbed my boots and decided to hike down toward the Green River Gorge area, which was only about 5 miles from the lookout by trail. I wanted to see if the smoke was real or just a trick of the light. The hike was brutal. The trails are steep, covered in loose rocks and fallen branches. The forest was eerily quiet. No birds or rustling or any of the usual forest ambience like you would expect to hear. About halfway down, I stumbled on something strange. A clearing with a bunch of burnt-out trees, but the ground was covered in this weird, yellowish residue. It looked almost chemical and not like normal ash. I took a sample with a plastic bag that I carry for emergencies. I pressed forward. About 2 miles from the clearing, I found what looked like an abandoned research outpost. There were old metal crates, broken antennas, and a rusted-over vehicle with no license plates. The place had been picked clean, but smelled faintly of burnt plastic and something metallic. I searched the area with my camera and phone. No signal still, but I documented everything. I wasn't sure what to make of it. The place did not show up on any maps I'd studied, and none of the rangers had mentioned it ever. Then, as I was about to leave, I heard it. It was a low hum, like a machine running somewhere inside the trees. It was faint but steady. I followed the sound and found a trapdoor, partially buried under leaves and dirt. It was metal, reinforced, with a weird symbol scratched into it. Hard to properly describe without a picture to show you, but kind of like a triangle with lines crossing through. I don't know why, but I pulled it open. Inside was a dark stairwell, descending underground. I did not have a flashlight, so I used my phone's weak light. The air smelled stale, like chemicals and old electronics. I made it down about 10 feet before the stairs gave way to a tunnel, lit dimly by flickering fluorescent lights. The walls were lined with pipes and cables, and the floor was wet and slick. Then I heard a voice. It wasn't human. It wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before. It was low and mechanical, but with an almost pleading tone. I froze, my heart pounding. That is when I realized this wasn't just some abandoned military project or environmental hazard. Something else was down here. Something alive, or not alive, but conscious. It was one of those moments where your brain just locks up, and you don't think about anything else but getting the hell away. I did not stop running until I was back at the Firewatch Tower, drenched in sweat, even though the air was cold and sharp. I sat on the small wooden bench outside the tower, trying to slow my breathing. My hands were shaking, and for the first time since I started this job, I felt genuinely scared. I didn't know what the hell I'd just seen, and I'm not the guy who jumps to wild conclusions. The forest has secrets, sure, but they are usually simple in things like old mining shafts, some squatters, the occasional pissed-off elk, not whatever that was. When I finally calmed down and made my way back inside the cabin, I made notes of everything, but I didn't tell dispatch or anyone else. Who would believe me? They would write me off as some crazy lookout who lost it in the woods. But I know what I saw, and I decided that the best course of action was going back down the next day with proper gear. It sounds stupid in retrospect, but I needed to find out what the hell it was, what those figures were, and what was really hiding under the forest floor. The next morning, I woke up early, much earlier than usual. I could not shake the feeling that I had to check something. The trapdoor was still in the clearing down the trail, near that weird patch of moss and dead brush that I'd stumbled over the day before. I needed to see if it was still there, if anything else was around. I strapped on my boots, grabbed my pack, and headed out. The trail from the tower back to the place was about 3 miles, maybe a bit more if you took the detours. It's not a popular trail, mostly used by hunters and locals during hunting season, which wasn't for a few months yet. I passed the usual markers, like the twisted old pine near the switchback and the rocky outcrop where the wildflowers bloom late, and tried to keep my head down. I tried to just focus on the trail. The clearing looked normal at first, quiet, no weird smells this time, no strange noises. but then I saw it. Near the trap door, half buried under some fallen branches and dirt, there was a metal cylinder about a foot long, dented and scratched. I don't know how I missed it the first time. It looked like a piece of equipment, maybe something from a survey or a forestry crew. Except it wasn't painted or marked, just bare metal. I picked it up carefully. It was heavier than I thought, cold to the touch, and had this faint oily residue on the surface. I didn't have any gloves, but I wiped my hand on my pants. The cylinder was sealed shut. There was no screws, and there was no obvious way to open it. I was about to leave when I noticed a faint, rhythmic clicking noise coming from inside it. Not mechanical, but more like a pulse or a heartbeat. My first thought was some kind of tracking device or remote sensor, maybe something used by wildlife researchers, but it felt off, like it wasn't meant for animals. I shoved the cylinder into my pack and kept moving. I figured I would take it back to the tower and look over it later. The rest of the day was uneventful. I couldn't muster up the courage to go back to the trapdoor. Just thinking about going down there made me nervous, and plus, this cylinder bullshit was making me worry too. I could not stop thinking about that cylinder. What was it doing down there, and who left it? I should have reported it right away, but I was still scared of being dismissed and made fun of. I unpacked the cylinder under the single bare bulb in the tower. The clicking sound had stopped, but I could feel a faint vibration if I held it close. I tried to shake it, tap it against the table, but nothing happened. There was a small panel on one side, almost invisible, like it had been designed to blend in. I pressed on it with my thumbnail, and suddenly, the cylinder popped open like a clamshell. Inside was a small piece of paper, folded tight and yellowed with age. I unfolded it carefully. There was nothing written on it. There was just a faint outline of a map, drawn in pencil. It showed the ridge where I was, but with strange markings I didn't understand, some kind of grid pattern, and a few dots that did not match any trails or landmarks that I knew. I looked closer, and noticed that one of the dots was right where the trapdoor was. I shoved the paper back in and closed the cylinder. My head was spinning. This felt like something out of a spy movie or some other cliched bullshit, but this was unfortunately real. The next day, I told myself to forget it and just focus on the job. But late afternoon, when the sun was getting low again, I saw something from the tower window that froze me. Down near the swampy meadow, not far from the trapdoor clearing, a group of people moved silently through the trees. I couldn't see faces, just dark shapes, but they weren't dressed like hunters or hikers. No camo, no packs, just black jackets and pants that blended into the shadows. They were carrying what looked like long cases, rifles or equipment cases maybe, but their movements were too careful and deliberate. They spread out, circling the area like they were searching for something. They were trying to be discreet. I grabbed my binoculars, heart pounding. I tried to call it in on the radio, but again, just static. They stayed there for almost an hour, then disappeared back into the forest, leaving no trace. That night, I barely slept. I thought about packing up and leaving, but this job was supposed to be temporary. I didn't want to quit, but whatever was happening out there, it wasn't just forest management or Firewatch duty anymore. A couple days later, I decided to hike back to the trapdoor one last time, to see if I could find any sign of those people or the equipment they left behind. The forest was thick, damp from a recent rain, and the trail was slippery with moss. When I reached the clearing, the trapdoor was gone. The metal frame and hatch had been pulled up and dragged into the underbrush somewhere. I searched around but only found faint tire tracks in the dirt, like from an ATV or a small truck. Never had any problems with the job after that. Everything passed by normally, albeit very boringly. Whatever was going on there, I have no fucking clue. I wish I hadn't pussied out and explored that trapdoor properly, but this was years ago now, and so I suppose I will never have any proper answers. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. Last summer, I decided to tackle a major section of the Pacific Crest Trail. I've always loved hiking, especially solo trips. My plan was simple. Park my car at the end of the section, hitch a ride to the trailhead, and hike back over a little more than a week and a half. It sounded straightforward enough. The first few days went smoothly. The trail was everything I'd hoped for. Towering trees, winding paths, and serene landscapes. I'm in good shape, so I did not need to stop often. I never hiked in the dark though, so each night I pitched my tent. I prefer to keep a low profile when I camp, especially as a solo hiker, so I would always venture a little off the trail to set up camp, just to minimize the chance of someone stumbling upon me. Up until the third night, everything was fine. But that night changed everything, and it's the reason I'm taking an extended break from hiking or any kind of wilderness exploration. I woke in the middle of the night with a gut feeling that something was off. I looked around my tent. Everything seemed normal inside. I grabbed my flashlight and rifle, unzipped the tent, and checked the campsite. No one was out there, or at least, no one that I could see. I went back and started checking my pack. That is when I realized my wallet was gone. At first, I thought I'd misplaced it, maybe left it outside the tent, or buried it in my gear. But after tearing through everything, it was clear it had been taken. My cash, my cards, and personal information were all gone. It was hard to believe someone could have gotten into my tent, taken just that, and left. Over the next few days, more things started to go missing. A lighter, my Swiss Army knife, a few energy bars. Small items, but it was obvious I was not losing them. Someone was stealing them. By the fourth day, I was sure I was being stalked. There was no cell coverage, so I could not contact anyone. I considered turning back, but it wouldn't have helped much. I still needed to sleep, and did not feel safe doing that anymore. The fact that my rifle had not been taken struck me. It felt deliberate, like someone was playing with me. That night, I tied the tent shut from the inside and tried to stay awake, but I eventually passed out. Luckily, nothing seemed disturbed by morning. Still, I was unraveling. Every noise in the woods made my heart race. I'd never had anxiety before, but I was consumed by it now. My mind began to play tricks, hallucinations. Once, I stepped in what felt like a puddle, heard the splash, felt the cold water, but when I looked down, the ground was dry. The hallucination started to fade, but the fear remained. One night, I woke up to footsteps outside my tent. I grabbed my rifle, too scared to move. The steps eventually faded, but I did not sleep again. At first light, I packed up in a panic, hands shaking. I was less than 2 days away from my car, maybe a day and a quarter if I pushed really hard. I decided to hike straight through, no sleep, to get out of there as fast as possible. When the sun set, I kept going. I had my flashlight in one hand, rifle in the other. Hiking in the dark was harder than I imagined. About an hour in, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun and flashed the light. Something darted behind a tree. I shouted and raised my rifle. A man stepped out. He was wearing nothing but a pair of my shorts, which I had not even realized were missing. His skin was scratched, and his face was covered in hair. He walked toward me, despite the rifle. I fired a warning shot. He jumped and ran into the woods. I did not waste a second. I ran. When I finally reached my car, I locked the doors and called the police. They advised me to leave immediately. I did not need to be told twice. What haunts me most is not just the encounter, but how my mind betrayed me. The hallucinations were unlike anything I thought possible. I was on a cross-country road trip with a colleague. We were driving through West Texas on a major highway. In the area where we were, even the major highway was pretty desolate. There had been a truck stop or gas station about every 100 miles, and every single one of them was solitary, with no other buildings in sight. These weren't really towns, the exits, just places to get more gas, to get to the next gas station. It was pretty late at night, and she had been driving for like 4 hours. I usually can drive for about 8 before I'm tired out. I go on frequent road trips, but she could only manage 4 or 5, maybe, before it was my turn again. We were also getting low on gas, at about a quarter tank, and you learn from road travel to fill up when you get the chance. So, she was looking for a gas station as we drove along. It's really corny, but we were talking about fate and destiny, and some other weird shit at the time. That kind of conversation gets me keyed up and worried, so I was trying to change the subject. She took an exit while we were talking, and I got out my coffee mug so I could fill up for my turn driving. We pulled into a typical Nowhereville gas station, just the station and a trailer out back. I assume, thinking back, it was probably where the people who owned it lived. There was another car parked in front of the doors off to one side. We got out, still talking, and walked up to the double doors, each of us grabbing a door handle. The doors were locked. I turned and looked around to see if there was a sign. Sometimes, places will put up a "back in 5 minutes" sign, and notice several things in succession. The coffee maker inside was halfway done brewing a fresh pot of coffee. The monitors that showed the store were visible from the outside, where we were, but all of them were showing static, and there was a splash of bright red on the door in the back of the place, which was closed. I suddenly realized I was looking at a huge streak of blood with handprints in it. Every hair on my neck stood up. My friend began shaking the door, yelling, "We need to get gas." But I had already turned and walked away from the doors. "We have to leave, now." I grabbed her arm and started propelling her back into the car. Now I noticed the other car in the lot. It had no plates. It was dingy and had dents. There was an empty gun rack in the window of it. I ran to the car, dragging her with me. She seemed to take forever to open her door and get in. She had the key still. The whole time she kept saying, "But we need gas." Well, I tried to explain to her, there is blood in there, blood. After what seemed like a year, she pulled the car out. When we were backing up, I saw through the windows that the back door in the gas station was opening up. We had pulled away before anything came out, thankfully. I freaked out until we were about 20 miles down the highway. I tried to call the police, but had no signal. I did not get a phone signal until we had driven about 40 miles and got to a truck stop. Again, not in a town, just a building on its own in the middle of nothingness. I called the cops, they thanked me, and I never heard anything more about it. To this day, I feel like if I had not freaked out, we probably would have met the robber or whoever was in the back room of the place. I also wish I had been able to find out what the hell happened there. It was a Chevron station, somewhere in the western part of Texas, at least, within about 100 miles or so of the signs for those places on Route 10. Never have heard back. This all happened in 2002. Be me, 8 years old. Live in shitty area near Detroit. No electricity, therefore no furnace. House heated by 2 kerosene heaters. End of winter, going into spring. Both heaters going. One in kitchen, one in living room. All doors open to circulate warm air. Inside of house clearly lit up like fucking Christmas because 2 kerosene heaters in tiny house. 13-year-old brother sleeping on front porch. Not too cold like winter, not too hot, and no fleas from crawl space like summer. Wake up like I have done my whole life at 2 to 3 a.m. to drink all of the water on the face of the earth. Navigate house half asleep, careful of the heaters in the middle of the room. They burn the shit out of you. Destroy 1 cup of warm pipe water at sink. Refill with good cold running water from my walk back to my room. Inhaling my cup of water on my way back to my bedroom. Water spilling down my chest. Looking through an around clear Fingerhut cup from the 8 days that were free when you buy stuff that my granny gave to us. Dip around heater. Still chugging my H2 bro. See something in the doorway to the front porch. Stop drinking. Stop walking. Standing 3 to 4 feet away from it. Very small house. Freeze in place. Freaking out, but also what the fucking. I am a hard-ass child, ready to chase a grown crackhead out of my house, cause ain't nobody stealing my Christmas bike again. It is shorter than me. Can I take it? Is it real? Almost glowing. Totally washed out with no features. No shadows at all. Its head was 1/3 of its total size. No arms that I could see. 3 legs in a triangle stance, or 2 legs in a tail. 2 eyes the size of tennis balls. Mouth 10 to 12 inches wide, flat, and rounded at the edges. No eyes, no teeth, just black holes, all soft and rounded. I always thought it looked like a cartoon. No, I would say a hologram of a cartoon. Kinda fuzzy at the edges, like a grey alien, but with a flat, smushed wide oval-shaped head. Child mind thinks my older brother fucking MacGyvered a trick, 'cause older brother, with cardboard, and... Child mind thinks motherfucker, that shit ain't cardboard, That shit is real as fuck, and 3 feet away. What the fuck is wrong with you? Standoff ensues. It is not moving, but moving organically, clearly alive and not a frozen image. Standoff continues. Watching like a fucking hawk for the slightest movement, frozen like a deer in full flight mode. A minute or so into the standoff, I get braver and begin to move slightly. Looking at it, judging the threat level, still half not believing what I say. It is so fucking close to me. Did it move forward? No. I am leaning toward it, trying to see my brother's bed around doorframe. Is he in bed? Is he okay? Can't see his bed, but I notice 3 or 4 glowing ball shapes in a line behind it. Remember that I love my brother. I would die for my brother. Remember that I am a insert family name here, and we ain't having that shit. About 2 minutes into standoff, the first words are spoken, forever sealing the fate of our planet. Spoken from the mouth of an 8-year-old psychopath to a home-invading space alien ghost. Fuck you. This is my house. Get out. Fuck you. Child mind wonders if alien ghost understands fuck you. Of course they do. Hear a noise from my brother. When I look to see my brother again, I notice that the balls of light are human fetuses. Child mind is filled with understanding that this thing is stealing/eating babies. Anger begins to overcome fear. Give alien ghost the finger, right up in its blank face. It does not respond, only continues to move its mouth slightly and sway slightly. My hood instincts kick in. Try to poke space alien ghost as hard as I can in the chest with finger, like you do to pick a fight. Alien ghost steps back to avoid my finger. A small floating fetus orb makes an exhale sound at the same time. Okay, that's enough. Nope across the house, screaming mom and dad. Dad has shotgun, only 30 feet away in tiny house. Light on. Parents search the house, ask questions later. Tell parents everything. Give description. Tell them it was stealing and eating babies. They are like, meh, Tuesday night in the hood. Dad says, big eyes, probably an owl in the window. Not in the window, Dad, in the doorway inside. Mom tells me she was glad that I saved my brother. Brother saw and heard nothing. Brother died in a car accident 2 years later. Rip, big bro. I recently moved out of my old apartment, and I have never been happier. The apartments I lived in were kind of old, but still really nice with a rustic feel. Each little island contained 4 buildings, each with 4 units. 2 buildings would face each other, one of them with its patio facing the patio of another building, and the parking lot would be in between. This meant from my building and my master bedroom balcony, I could see the parking lot in the front of the adjacent building, and in the second room, my workout/office room, I could see the patios of my neighbors. Shortly after I moved in, this guy moved into the building behind me, 1 unit over. He and I would sit on our patios every night during the summer with a fire going. Sometimes, he would play his guitar and have a beer while his dog barked at everything. I would make s'mores or do some woodworking. Being that we were the only 2 people using our patios, we began to bond. We actually became pretty good friends and ended up having small parties with just the 2 of us joking around, having beer and s'mores, and messing with his dog. However, during the colder months or on the summer nights where we weren't out back having fun, he would let his dog out at the same time every night, 9 p.m. His dog would remain outside for 30 minutes exactly, and I could hear him bark at everything. It didn't bother me much because I was usually working out or watching TV, and I could drown it out. Fast forward a bit. I had been there 2.5 years, the guy just a few months short of that. But for those 2.5 years, his dog barked for 30 minutes, starting at 9 p.m. every night. But the guy slowly started becoming more distant and acting weird. He wouldn't come out as often during the summer. He wouldn't come over at all anymore. It didn't bother me in the sense that I was losing a buddy. It was just odd. But his dog was still outside every night. So, I started spending summer nights out back by myself again, but his dog would still be let out every night. It was weird though, because no lights were ever on in this guy's house anymore. I would see the privacy blinds of his patio door shuffle, and the door would open, drag the leash inside, the dog would come out, and the door would close. Same thing in reverse when the dog went back in, but I could never make out the guy. One day, I decided to see if he was alright. He'd mentioned one night about going through a divorce, but he was trying not to let it get him down. I figured he probably lost everything, and the divorce was final or some shit, and he was depressed. Normally when I go over, I would knock on the patio door and go in from there, since it was just across the back. I went over one day after work, while it was still daylight, and knocked, but there was no answer. I went around to the front, and his car was not there, which was odd, because he was usually home at this time. I went back around, and just peeked through the patio door though, just in case. I was pretty shocked though. None of his stuff was there. It's almost like he literally disappeared. Just the day before, I had seen him, and he did not mention anything about moving. No moving van, nothing like that. I went to the leasing office and asked about him, and he told me they'd moved out that morning. When I asked why, they said he never gave a reason, just that he needed to end his lease early. I felt pretty bad for the guy, being that he was a total bro, an overall nice guy. But I went home and continued my evening as usual. Until 9 p.m. that is. At 9 p.m., I heard what I can only describe as a mix between a mournful moan mixed with the bark of a dog that was being choked. That description does not even do it justice, but it sounded almost as though whatever were making the sound was saying, "Howl" or "Ow." The sound was very close, so I looked out the patio door, but I did not see anything. I went to my office and took a look out the window. From there, I saw a shadowy figure in my ex-neighbor's patio. To this day, the thought of that figure gives me the most legitimately terrifying chills I think I will ever get. It looked like the silhouette of a dog standing on its hind legs, not balancing on the fence or the wall or anything, just standing there, making that horrible moaning/bark sound. I locked all doors and windows and just sat there listening to it for 30 grueling minutes. Every night, like clockwork, starting at 9 p.m. and ending at 9:30 p.m., I heard the moan/bark. It drove me nuts and terrified me. I didn't know who or what that thing was that was making it, just that I could see the silhouette it made in the patio. I had friends over to confirm it. Before they saw and heard the thing, they suggested we just go and see what made the noise. But once they heard the moan and saw the shadow, they changed their minds. When my lease was up, I told the people at the office I was out and never coming back. I hauled as much shit out of there in one day as I could to avoid coming back, and I have never been happier. It's like some kind of weight was lifted off of my shoulders. To this day, I don't know what that thing was, what it was doing out there barking, or where the guy went.